I'd been seeing Sarah for about 2 months when she finally told me about the marble. We'd already said the L word. Well, she had, at least, she'd told me she loved me, that she wanted to be with me forever, that there was nothing she wanted more than to spend every night in my arms. She spoke those words with such sincerity, her eyes shining with something I had yet to fully comprehend. A part of me wanted to say it back. But I couldn't. How could I? She'd never spent a full night with me. How could I say, "I love you," to a woman who always rushed out of my place after only a few hours? It didn't make sense. It felt like she was just leaving, slipping away, like I couldn't hold on to her even though she was right there in my arms. Sure, we'd slept together, no problem there. The most intense, unforgettable sex of our lives, we'd both agreed. Our bodies tangled together in a way that was almost primal, a need to feel each other like we might never see each other again. We whispered sweet things, our hair and limbs intertwined, everything about that night felt perfect. I thought maybe, this time, I was really loved. Then, as we both started to drift off, she'd suddenly jerk awake, her eyes wide open, panic written all over her face. She'd scramble out of bed, moving fast, like she couldn't get dressed fast enough. It was always the same. She'd freeze mid-motion, like she was caught in some deep, internal struggle, torn between staying with me and fleeing. "Sarah, where are you going?" I'd plead, my voice thick with confusion, frustration. "Stay with me, baby. Please." She'd kiss me quickly, almost frantically. "I can't, I have to leave. I told you, I can't stay." "But why?" I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of doubt and something deeper, something I didn't want to admit. "You don't have kids, no husband, nothing holding you back." "I swear, I don't," she'd say, kissing me again, her lips almost desperate, as if she wanted to believe it herself. I can't stay. I have to go." And then she'd leave. Every time. No matter how many times I begged her to stay. The door would slam shut behind her with a sickening finality that left me cold and empty in the silence of my apartment. I believed her, though. I convinced myself it wasn't a big deal, just some strange habit or past trauma. Maybe she was scared of commitment. That was until she finally told me the truth. After she confessed she loved me, she pulled me close, her body trembling, and swore me to secrecy. "Jake, please believe me," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. "When I sleep, I turn into marble." I laughed it off, trying to lighten the mood, to brush off the weight of what she was saying. "All right, Sarah. Whatever you say." But she wasn't laughing. She was staring at me with those wide jade green eyes of hers, pleading, as if this was her last chance to be understood. "No, Jake. I'm serious. I turn into stone when I sleep. It started after an old boyfriend of mine." She paused, swallowing hard, her face pale. "He tried to hurt me while I was asleep." My heart stopped. Anger flared up inside me, burning hot and fast, but I pushed it down, shoved it deep inside where it wouldn't threaten to explode. I pulled her closer, kissing her gently, trying to calm her. "What do you mean, babe?" I asked softly, my voice barely a whisper. Tears welled up in her eyes. "I don't know why it happens. I've researched it, but I've never told anyone before. At first, it wasn't a big deal. But then, that's how I knew. I started dating again, and the first night I stayed over at Barry's, my new boyfriend, he woke up screaming. He was staring at me, terrified. I had turned into a marble statue in my sleep. When I wake up, I go back to normal, but... I shook my head, not sure I was following her, but realizing it didn't matter. This was some kind of test of our love, I guess. I didn't need to understand. I kissed her trembling lips, doing my best to reassure her, to tell her that nothing mattered except her. Sarah, I don't care about that, okay? You could turn into a frog when you sleep, and I'd still love you. Her eyes brightened, her face glowing with a kind of relief I hadn't noticed before. Jake, she whispered. You've never told me that you loved me before. I kissed her again, this time with more passion, more urgency, feeling the weight of everything she had been carrying. I haven't. Well, I'm telling you now. I love you, Sarah. Her eyes filled with tears. I thought they were tears of happiness, but as I look back on that night, I realize now they were tears of fear. She was terrified, and I had no idea how deep her fear went. You don't understand, she sobbed, how terrified I was of losing you. I love you so much. And the sleeping thing. I haven't slept over with a man since Barry. Her voice broke, and she started to choke up. He killed himself. He couldn't deal with seeing me turn into marble. It wasn't my fault. He had his own problems before. I didn't know how to respond to that. The weight of her words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I held her tighter, not knowing what to say or how to fix the broken pieces of her past. All I could do was hold her, hoping that somehow, I could make it all better. She cried herself to sleep in my arms, and I held her close, not daring to let go. That night, everything felt right, like we were meant to be together. I thought, for once, I'd found someone I could truly love, and who could love me back. But the next morning, everything would change. We woke up in the early hours, tangled in each other's arms. It felt like the perfect moment, a dream that I didn't want to end. But then, something shifted. I woke up suddenly, feeling an unnatural coldness pressing against my skin. Something was wrong, and it took me a few seconds to understand why. I reached out, my hand brushing against something stone-cold and unyielding. I froze, my body stiffening in terror as I realized that someone, was lying next to me. I turned on the bedside light, my heart pounding in my chest. What I saw sent a chill straight through my bones. There, lying next to me, was a statue. A woman made entirely of marble, her skin white, streaked with veins of jade and black. Her stone limbs were tangled with mine, as if frozen in an eternal embrace. Her face was peaceful, almost serene, but I knew it was wrong. This wasn't normal. This wasn't right. I screamed, my voice high and frantic, as I tried to yank myself free from the cold grip of her stone body. But as I struggled, something strange happened. The marble seemed to shudder, almost as if it was alive. And then, the color returned to her, starting at her head, a flush of human warmth spreading down her body. Slowly, she began to breathe again, her chest rising and falling. I couldn't process it. My mind was racing, my heart was pounding in my chest. I fought to break free, finally managing to pull my arm and leg away from her. In a panic, I shoved her off the bed, and she fell to the ground with a sickening thud. I heard a loud cracking sound, followed by the deafening silence that hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah. My voice was barely a whisper, shaky with fear. I got up slowly, my legs weak beneath me, and moved to the edge of the bed. My eyes locked onto her body on the floor. There she was, lying broken on the floor, her body shattered into 2 marble pieces. Only her head remained human, her black hair spread out behind her, her jade-green eyes wide open in terror. Her lips were frozen in a silent scream, her final cry forever captured in her face. I stumbled back, my heart hammering in my chest. I wanted to scream, to run, to do something, anything, but I was frozen. This wasn't happening. I must have been dreaming. This was a nightmare. But it wasn't a nightmare. It was real. The woman I had loved, the woman who had trusted me enough to share her darkest secret, was gone. Her body lay in front of me, shattered, broken. And I knew, deep down, I would never be the same again. I would never escape the horror of what I had just witnessed. I crouched beside her, reaching out to touch her lifeless face, the coldness of the stone sending a shiver down my spine. There was nothing I could do. She was gone. But her eyes were still locked onto mine, filled with a pain that would haunt me for the rest of my life. I couldn't look away. I wouldn't. And as the silence in the room pressed down on me, I realized I would never escape what had happened, what I had allowed to happen. The marble would always be there, lurking in the dark corners of my mind.